because he was the best player in the league.
He could be the best player in the league. He could be the worst.
Welcome, John, to the World XP podcast. It's a pleasure to have you back. I know we were on, we talked some months ago about your up and coming as a sports writer, and then we had you on the World XP soccer channel. Go check that out. Get your merch here. Yeah. And now we've got you back for a special edition of the World XP podcast, NBA preseason edition. Well, not preseason, preview, season preview.
Yeah.
We'll go with that. Something like that. If you guys are enjoying the content, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Really helps the channel out.
Yes.
And without further ado, let's get into it.
Sounds good. It's always a pleasure to be on World XP podcast.
Love it.
Definitely subscribe.
All right, let's get into it. All right, so first, we've got Dwight Howard and Anthony Davis. At the time of recording was last night, so Friday. I guess the Lakers were getting sort of blown out by the Suns, and they've got into some sort of altercation on the sideline. What do you got for us with that one?
So they got into as you were saying, the Lakers were getting dominated by the defending Western Conference champion Suns, who are no easy opponent to beat. And Anthony Davis was obviously frustrated, and so were several other members of the team, given the amount of talent they have, and given that they had just previously lost to the Golden State Warriors on their home court. And so it seemed like they were talking to each other. Anthony Davis didn't seem to appreciate what Howard was saying or critiquing him about. Gave Howard a little bit of a push, but there was no real physical altercation, as some are led to believe. It was a little shove, but this morning it was said that they're fine with each other. They're good.
In your opinion, this is much ado about nothing, people trying to make something of it?
I think it's a lot to do with more so the Lakers. I mean, they bring in Russell Westbrook this offseason, who's a big piece, a great player, triple doubles day in, day out, trying to fit him into the whole formula and fit him in with all these other new pieces like Dwight Howard, who was previously with the Lakers, but then spent a year with the Sixers, comes back, trying to fit him in and some of these new pieces after a busy offseason.
Growing pains, I guess. Hopefully,
yes.
LeBron has had his fair share of slow starts with new big threes, I guess, or kind of big offseason moves. So this I would expect to be no different. I'm sure probably they might struggle for a couple of weeks, but then you think come like Christmas time they'll be good to go.
They'll definitely be a playoff contender, NBA champion contender. When you have LeBron James and the way Anthony Davis seems to be playing so far, as long as he can stay healthy, they're definitely going to be in that top 3 of the Western Conference.
Nice. And we will get to our playoff predictions, John's playoff predictions later. But 2 more sort of newsworthy stories before we get into the basketball side of things. We got Kyrie Irving. He still has not got the vaccine. What are you hearing from the league or the Nets or Kyrie himself? What's sort of the situation? Is he just not going to be able to play? Are they going to make an exception for him? What's the situation there?
Well, it seems like they cannot make an exception. They've been pretty firm with the city guidelines, be it New York City, Brooklyn area, you must have the vaccination, especially being in a public setting, which is just for health and safety of everyone playing basketball or who's in that general vicinity. Kyrie seems to be holding his beliefs that he doesn't want to get the vaccine, which is his choice. But until he does, it doesn't seem like he'll be able to play or join the team in small practices anytime soon.
So what do you make of this situation, right? If he continues to hold firm and they're paying him however much money they're paying him, is he getting fined per game that he misses? Is he not getting paid? If he is getting paid, then the team would, I would think, maybe want to move him because they're paying all this money for somebody who's not playing. So what do you see or what are you hearing from around the league that the potential future of this situation?
I'm not hearing much about him moving. It doesn't seem like with a lot of these players that are refusing to get the vaccination, simply by moving to a different place doesn't mean you're going to be welcomed into that locker room. And Kyrie's a great player, so the price tag is very high. And so I think regardless of whether or not he chooses to get it, or as of right now, eventually it seems like he will have to get it and face that challenge, because if he's not on the court, he's not making money and he's not improving his self-image.
Is there any chance that he just, if he feels this strongly about it, like I'm not sure if he already got COVID or if he had it or not. Is there any chance if he feels this strongly about it that he might just, I guess, retire? Well, I guess it would be retirement, that he would do something like that.
There has been that idea of him retiring, but he's still at a very young age, is a multi-all-star player, top tier point guard. It's highly unlikely he retires at this time. I see a time frame of him rejoining the Nets around December, January, within that time frame, and then the Nets getting back on. They showed last night, even without him, they're still a great team. But you add Kyrie back into the fold, you've got arguably the best team in the NBA.
Yeah, it'll be almost like a new signing when he comes back, assuming he comes back. And that'll be really good for them, breath of fresh air. All right, and we got one last one.
Mm-hmm.
Ben Simmons had some ups and mostly downs this offseason. Moving into the season, he was holding out. He said he didn't want to play for the Sixers again. He has since backtracked on that, but he was suspended for the first game by Philadelphia. Mm-hmm. What is the situation there? What's the future hold for them? To me, it seems like kind of an unfixable situation, but what are you hearing? What are your thoughts?
So this has been going on for months, ever since the infamous missed layup against the Atlanta Hawks in that Game 7 elimination. But I think even before then, it was kind of in the making. Like, he wasn't quite fitting and gelling with Embiid and some of the other players. It's said that he wasn't putting in the effort. Whether that's true or not, it seems like he's not going to be playing for the Sixers ever again. I think having him rejoin the team, even if he does reach that mental ability to rejoin, I'm not sure if the players or Doc Rivers wants him back in that locker room, just because of what he's done in the past. Ruins a team's chemistry. And the Sixers showed on opening night when they took out the New Orleans Pelicans, like, they're a quality team. They may not be that force to be reckoned with like they were with Simmons, but they're still a great team. And I think it's similar to, it's not the same, but it's along the same lines of the whole Deshaun Watson. Let's say Miami was to trade for him, and somehow he's able to join. He gets cleared. You don't want that type of presence in your locker room. It ruins the whole team, what they stand for, the players, everything. So as good as Ben Simmons is, it seems like the best thing for him and the Sixers is to find a new destination.
What are you hearing as far as potential destinations for him? Because the price tag obviously wouldn't be as high as it was this time last year, but still high nevertheless.
Yes. And so Daryl Morey is a great general manager. He's proven himself when he was with Houston, with Philadelphia. It seems like there's no clear suitor at this time, and it could take a while. Daryl Morey recently said it could take months. He would like to see Ben Simmons back in the fold, but this process could take a while. As far as teams that I could see joining the conversation, I would say the most clear ones seem to be the Sacramento Kings. They seemed interested during the postseason of last year. They have a good connection with Morey and their general manager, and they have the assets, be it Tyrese Halliburton, who they'd probably keep, but they have like guys like Buddy Hield, De'Aaron Fox. They got different pieces. Rashawn, I think they still have Rashawn Holmes, but they have these different assets that they could swing to Philadelphia, put them into contenders, and then get a good player in return and form that new kind of front court, back court, kind of big ball handlers with Davion Mitchell, Ben Simmons. I think Marvin Bagley's there. So yeah.
Did the Kings did they make the playoffs last year?
No, they
were close, right?
They were close. They were in there for a while, but then they kind of fell to the back.
Yeah, because I remember they have some promising young pieces. So would like giving up a Buddy Hield and maybe Halliburton or somebody like that, would that make them a playoff contender in your eyes?
I think it puts them at the border. I don't think they have the bench depth. Even if you add Simmons, I think currently they have the depth, but they don't have that star go-to player. I think if they were to add Ben Simmons, they'd have someone who can facilitate the ball, run the point, facilitate the ball to those other shooters, like be it Halliburton, Hield, Fox, one of those guys.
Gotcha. Is Bagley, how has he developed? I remember when he came into the league that he had a lot of upside, and I've not paid super close attention to him the last year or so. How is he?
Yes.
Is that development there?
It's there. Yeah, it's taken a little bit of time. I mean, he was one of the top guys in the draft a couple of years ago. And actually, I think Badgley's no longer with the team. They're mainly going through Harrison Barnes, and they do have Rashawn Holmes, and they have like Tristan Thompson, but Harrison Barnes is really developed. That's who I had gotten mixed with. But Barnes is really starting to step it up, be that small forward. He's along the same lines of Badgley in that they started out slow, but now they're starting to find their footing.
Gotcha. I remember when Harrison Barnes came out of North Carolina, he looked like a really good, solid option.
Right.
And then with Golden State, he fit in well with that group, but he was never the top option given Curry and Clay and Draymond. But seemed like a good piece nevertheless. All right. Now let's get into some of the, I guess we'll say, predictions with a game or two under the belt. So you want to start with the East or the West?
I'll start with the East. I feel like they've got the most top tier teams.
Sounds good.
So let's start with them.
So who you got in your, well, because they've got the play-in games for the playoffs now. So we'll go top 10-ish teams. I'm sure there'll be a couple on the bubble. Well, who you got? Let's go with, you want to start bottom to top?
Sure. So from the bottom going up, I find the worst team in the East to be the Magic. I think they've got a lot of promising young talent, but be that may, there's still a lot of work to be done. They're not a big market team, so they don't always, like you saw what happened to Shaquille O'Neal. He ditched Orlando for LA. And that happens with a lot of these guys is even when they do become big stars, maybe in Orlando, they want to go somewhere else that's more appealing. But they do have decent young players like Jalen Suggs, who they drafted out of Gonzaga. They have Wendell Carter Jr. at center. Markle Fultz started to develop, but he's gotten injured here and there. And they also added Franz Wagner, brother of Mo Wagner. So it'll be an interesting team, but they did already lose like Jonathan Isaac, who was their main power forward. He was out from a torn ACL. So it could be a while.
Yeah. Well, lottery bound for them. Maybe somebody good will come out of the draft and they'll get the next Shaquille O'Neal. Also, maybe not. All right. Who you got next?
It's got to be the Motor City. It's got to be Detroit. Detroit's got Cade Cunningham. But I was kind of puzzled by some of their offseason moves. They added a lot to their like the guys in the paint. But it was kind of puzzling because they had a bunch of pieces. Like they added Kelly Olynyk and Trey Lyles, but they lost a lot of their big guys like DeAndre Jordan, Mason Plumlee. I mean, they added Luke Garza, who had a great summer league play, but he's a second rounder and he hasn't played in the NBA. But their front court is starting to shape up. And you got Killian Hayes, you got Cade Cunningham. So they'll be interesting to watch, but I don't see them doing much.
Are they in kind of a, we're going to be bad for a couple of years and try and get some good lottery picks and then maybe swing a deal for a big player?
Yeah, I think it's really going to rely on the development of Killian Hayes. He was a big pick last year. And if he can improve, we already know Cade Cunningham can ball, and he'll prove that in this year. But it's really going to depend on Hayes because he's running the point. So everything goes through him.
Gotcha. All right. Who we got next?
All right. So keep it going. There's a few teams that kind of fall in this bottom middle tier, starting with the Cavaliers. I don't know how many centers they need, but apparently they feel like they need 5.
I remember looking at some of their offseason moves, and they ended up with Jared Allen, who was great with the Nets, and then they got Taco Fall, who is the biggest man ever to ever live. Who else? They got Mobley.
They got Lauri Markkanen, and then they draft Evan Mobley. So,
and Kevin Love as well is still there.
So
he's not really a center, but
Evan Mobley, who's going to be playing power forward, but he played center at USC, who they spent a top 5 pick on. You signed Jared Allen to this massive contract. You bring in Lauri Markkanen in that whole trade with Chicago. And you got Darius Garland and Colin Sexton. Sexton's great. Garland's been so-so. And I really like Isaac Okoro, small forward, but it's really puzzling adding so many decent big guys when you could use a lot more at those guard positions.
Yeah. Any sort of merit to the idea that of Ricky Rubio running pick and rolls for all 48 minutes, just rotating the big guys in?
I don't see much to it. I think there's a limit to Ricky Rubio, given his age. I mean, there's some to it, but sooner or later you figure out any type of offense and you're able to adapt. So I think it gets them so far, and then teams start to realize they kind of are one-dimensional at this time.
Yeah, he was great with Phoenix. I think he fit well there,
right?
Kind of what they needed, but I don't think it'll be the same here.
No.
All right.
So moving down or moving up, we got the Wizards. I know they started out 2-0. They had a big win last night over Indiana in overtime without Bradley Beal. And they've got promising pieces. Like we haven't seen much of Danny Avdia because he was injured most of last year. Mm-hmm. We saw a bunch of trades given that they got rid of Russell Westbrook. So you bring in Caldwell Pope, Kuzma, Harrell. And then they were able to fit in like Spencer Dinwiddie, who's highly underrated. And he showed that last night.
Yeah. I got the box score pulled up. Had a hell of a game.
Yeah. And they drafted Corey Kispert out of Gonzaga, who's arguably the best pure shooter of that draft. But I mean, even with Gafford and Hachimura, I still don't feel good that they're able to play that quality defense. They have a lot of offensive talent, but their defense is lacking.
So on the box score, it says Hachimura is not with the team. What is he hurt?
So Hachimura protocol? It's a little bit of a sticky situation because I think he's still in Japan due to family and a little bit of COVID issues. I think it's very private, but I think he's in Japan right now.
Okay, gotcha. And then, so for the Wizards specifically, Wes Unseld, is he going to be are they going to end up running this sort of run and gun type deal and with the players that they have and just basically hoping to outscore everybody? Is that what it's looking like?
I mean, I think their hope is to somehow squeeze their way in the playoffs again. But I think I'm a firm believer in that you kind of have to choose a direction at some point. You can't stay in the middle where the Wizards have been. And they're either going to have to ship Beal off and get a bunch of trade draft picks. Be it probably the trade deadline, you'd find the most value, or you've got to make a move. I think you stick with Gafford, he's had multiple multi-block games so far. I think he had 4 or 5 in the first game, a few last night. He's a great center. I think he's a good piece. I think Hachimura, when he is on the court, is a great piece. He shows flashes. Not sure about Kuzma. You don't know what you're going to get.
Kuzma's the best player in the league.
He could be the best player in the league. He could be the worst. And then, but they've got a lot of swing guards, small forwards, and Kispert. They've got Avdia, and then they've got a few others, but they kind of have to choose their direction. They can't stay here forever because it's not going to get you anything.
No, it's NBA purgatory, for lack of a better term. So if you're the GM, and I ask this only because we are in the DC area, if you're the GM, what do you do?
I would play it out as it goes. See what happens. But let's say a team that's in this belief that they can contend and they have strong interest for Bradley Beal, and you're able to get 3+ first rounders or so, I would take a good look at that deal, evaluate it, see if you could increase it, but consider what they're offering. If it's a team that's got a small window, okay, the first round pick for the first 1 to 2 years might not be great, but then they drop off and that you have a great chance of winning a lottery pick for that third pick. I might take him off on that. I mean, maybe add another player, but consider that deal.
Yeah. So has anyone shown concrete interest in Beal as of yet?
Not lately. I think there was a really strong interest after the season. The Sixers, I know, wanted him. I think the Lakers were highly interested before they made the deal for Westbrook. I think there's a couple teams who would greatly consider adding Beal because he's done nothing but prove he can ball. But I think it's kind of died down for the time being. We'll see what happens in these next few months. Players go down, unfortunately. People get sick with COVID. So we'll see.
Yeah, all sorts. All right. Moving into the top 10. I think the Wizards were 11.
All right.
Moving close to the top 10.
Moving closer. We've got the Raptors. Raptors, much like the Wizards, are in this weird state of purgatory. They just gave up one of their best players in their franchise history in Kyle Lowry, which was sad. But it needed to be done. He's getting older. he was entering the final year of his contract, or was an unrestricted free agent. I think it was the final year. But anyways, he needed to be traded. They found the Heat as the best possible trade partner. They got Goran Dragic and Precious Achua from that, which is great, especially Precious. I thought they would swing Dragic to like Dallas or somewhere else, but they decided to hold on to him. And so Dragic will probably play shooting guard or point, depending on Fred VanVleet, where he fits. But I really like their drafting of Scotty Barnes from Florida State. He kind of fell off, just given that he was a bench player from Florida State. But that's where he thrived. And during this offseason, he really lit up the NBA preseason.
Gotcha. Is he going to turn into kind of one of these? Obviously, he's a different profile of player from a Lou Williams or a J.R. Smith, but is he going to turn into one of these just 6 men of the year, every year type candidates? Is that kind of what he's looking like as his comparisons?
I wouldn't say specifically those players, but given his nature of play and
sure,
his
he's a
strengths
different
and weaknesses,
profile,
but
different
as far as
of
the
player,
6 man, yes, I could easily see in that for the time being. Given that OG Anunoby is playing small forward, and you got Pascal Siakam at power, and you got Dragic who's there for the time being, but he could easily slip into, maybe you could swing Anunoby to shooting guard, fit him at small forward. You can move him around. Yeah.
Gotcha. With OG Anunoby and Pascal Siakam, you've got a good little front court tandem there. If they continue to develop, especially Siakam, he's shown, at least from what I've seen, shown lots of flashes of really, really top quality.
Yeah.
All right.
Now I think it's somewhere in the top 10.
Yeah.
Charlotte. Charlotte's they're interesting. I'll give them that, especially with that ball. LaMelo Ball in his bright lime green suit and automobile he was driving with.
Hey, well, we've not heard from his dad in forever, so I think he's just doing his thing now, which is kind of a good thing for the franchise.
Yeah, it's working well. I mean, LaMelo, first night, balls out, lights it up, helps them. But even with LaMelo, Charlotte's still kind of a little bit not quite there. They've got good pieces like Miles Bridges, Terry Rozier. So they've got a good foundation. I mean, you got Gordon Hayward. And they just added one of my favorite rookies in James Bouknight from UConn. But they're still pretty young. And they need time to really work together and start to gain traction. They ended the season very well with 33-39 record, but unfortunately didn't make the playoffs, but they're moving in the right direction.
Yeah, it was kind of this. Obviously, I don't think that they will get to the finals this year, but it was the same as the Suns from a couple of years ago when they ended the season really strongly. Everybody was kind of like, "Oh, can they keep it up?" And then they get to the finals. Obviously, adding Chris Paul helps with that. But yeah, just going down the roster, I see lots of 19, 20, 21, 23, 20-year-olds. Obviously, Gordon Hayward's not really been the same since his horrible injury. And they also have Kelly Oubre is always a good piece. I think, to me anyway, he's underrated from watching him play in Washington and Phoenix, but that's a decent piece as well. All right. So you got what, Charlotte at, was it the 8 or the 9 spot?
Somewhere in there.
All right. So playoff bubble teams. So we're moving from the playoff bubble into more solid footing.
So bouncing from one ball brother to the other. I go from Charlotte to Chicago. Chicago, I've been impressed with so far, especially Zach Levine, who's arguably been the best player in the NBA so far. I mean, yeah, you got Steph Curry, I think Steph's been the best. 2-0 record, 30-plus points night in and night out. so far in 2 games. But Zach Levine has, I think, the 4th best player efficiency rating, is up there for points per game, and is, I think, the future of the franchise.
Yeah, it seems like he's been around for forever, but he's still only 26.
Right.
That's nuts.
And with Lonzo, I think he's probably the most improved player of the year. And then they bring in DeMar DeRozan, who's a great veteran presence.
They've also got Vucevic as well.
Yes.
And
he was fantastic with Orlando, but he was the only player for Orlando.
Yeah, he was fantastic in Orlando, but it was Orlando. That's the caveat all the time with them. Yeah, just going down the roster, it looks like, of course, Alex Caruso, the 2nd best player in the league behind Kyle Kuzma.
Yeah,
he's a big piece as well. They look promising.
Yeah. And so moving ahead, I've got the Pacers. I know they had an unfortunate loss last night to the Wizards, especially when you're playing the Wizards without Bradley Beal.
Mm-hmm.
You think you've got that game in the bag, but not so fast. But the Pacers, they're another interesting team, which seems to be in this weird state of just standstill. They've had this core for a long time with Warren, Sabonis, Turner, Brogdon, and recently they added Levert, and they brought in decent players like Torrey Craig, and they drafted Isaiah Jackson, but they lost Doug McDermott, who was a good small forward. But they have a lot of the same guys again, but they're still just in this state of mediocrity. But I think if Levert and Brogdon can stay healthy, with Sabonis playing as he does, they'll be considered in that playoff mix.
Is that why you've got them so high? Because of those 3 guys and Miles Turner as well?
Yeah, my hope is, especially with Rick Carlisle coaching, is that they can find this sort of, just find this groove and start gelling as they did a couple years back. Gotcha.
Sounds good. Moving into the sort of the top 6 or sort of Eastern Conference Finals contenders. Who's the first one on the list?
The Knicks. Yeah.
They're out of the cellar.
It's hard to say that, but especially because it's been forever. But with how they've been adding pieces slowly, I really like bringing Kemba Walker. Hopefully he can stay healthy. If he does, that's a great asset. But with Julius Randle, he's just evolving into this tremendous guy. He can rebound, he can shoot, he can facilitate and run the offense when it needs to be run. He can turn it from 0 to 100 on the dime. It's just incredible to see him evolve from when he started out with the Lakers to what he is now.
Yeah, he's another one that feels like he's been around for forever, but he's only 26 as well.
Right. And then they've got Mitchell Robinson back, who's a great center. He's not really recognized yet, but he's fantastic. And they bring in these small pieces like Evan Fournier, who can shoot. And in that first night, he was crucial to that win over Boston because he was hitting threes like it was the 3-point contest. He was not missing.
Yeah, I'm going to go pull up that box score. What did he have? Let's see.
It was ridiculous. That game was incredible. It was the best game so far. Boston should have won. They had multiple opportunities, but he was fantastic.
Evan Fournier, 6 for 13 from 3, 32 points.
Right.
Yeah, that'll do. And then Randall, obviously 35, 9, and 8. Another big performance from him.
Yeah.
All right. Looking good.
Yeah. And then, it's ironic because the next team I got is Boston. Like I said, Boston, I think, should have won that game. They had multiple opportunities, and especially because, they had Jalen Brown, who was possibly going to miss the game. They had to have him have an inhaler on the sideline because he was just getting out of COVID protocol. But I like their foundation. I mean, Horford's a little old, but they have decent backups like Enes Kanter, Bruno Fernando, Hernan Gomez, and then they've got a good bench. That's what I really like, is that they have Josh Richardson, who I liked with Philadelphia and with Dallas. They bring in Dennis Schroeder, who's a great point guard. He kind of lacks shooting at times, but he's a decent facilitator and on-ball defender.
Yeah, he's one of those sneaky good players. So somebody might say, hey, John, so they lost to the Knicks and then they got blown out the next game. Why do you have them so high? Is there a reason to panic for them, or is it just they had players out, missing? What kind of happened with that one?
I think the Knicks just they wanted to win more. I mean, I think it was simple as that. They were playing at MSG opening night, so you got that energy, that crowd. But I think when you start to get more along the line, these guys who have a little bit more talent, and maybe like Jason Tatum doesn't have the experience as Derrick Rose or Kemba Walker. He isn't as old as them. But Jason Tatum is perhaps going to be this next wave. I mean, he's already a star, but this next wave of superstars like Kevin Durant, in that he really transcends this greatness of the NBA.
Wild. And then the Toronto game, they lost by like 25. It's just a blip. They'll be fine.
Yeah.
Just a blip, John says. Well, we'll come back.
I wouldn't fret too much.
All right. Sounds good. Moving into the top five, the top four, top five. Who we got?
As of now, I mean, originally I had the Sixers over the Hawks. Like we were saying, yeah, the Hawks beat the Sixers last year. But Sixers have they've lost a few key bench players. So I would say the Sixers are next. Given the Ben Simmons saga, I don't think that's the big issue. I think it's more, it's a big issue. He's a great player. He's not playing. But I think it's more along the lines of they lost some of these key bench players, and they just need time because a lot of their guards are very young. They brought in Shaq Harrison. They brought in Grant Riller. Grant Riller he's a very unknown guard, played for Ohio University in college, but he was great there. And he was playing great in the preseason. Unfortunately, he suffered an injury and is going to be out for a little bit. But a lot of these pieces just need time. I think that's the problem.
So the ceiling is still high for you guys then, because Embiid is not really old, and so you've got these other young pieces. You guys will be around for a while. And when I say you guys, for those that don't know, John is a Sixers fan, all things Philadelphia sports fan. But
unfortunately,
that's good. Unfortunate. Well, except when the Eagles won the Super Bowl a couple of years ago. That was more fortunate. Yeah. All right, the Hawks, what they got? Trae Young, obviously, a couple good John Collins, etc.
Yeah, so those are the main two. I mean, those two alone are tremendous, especially John Collins, who had a phenomenal game last night. But I think, unlike the Sixers, they have a very established depth chart. And a lot of guys who, they didn't have DeAndre Hunter in the playoffs, and he's a fantastic defender. You've got Bogdanovich. I think Clint Capella's good. Don't get me wrong; he was great a couple of years ago, but I think there just been other centers that are just better. But they have the depth. They've got Kevin Huerter. They've got different pieces along that bench, like Jalen Johnson, Gorgie Dieng, Delon Wright, that are just able to propel them into this next state of their evolution.
DeAndre Hunter's out of UVA, isn't he? He is.
Yes. He was a great player for UVA.
Yeah, UVA showing out. Love that. And Jay, if you're listening, Well, your Hawks aren't going to make the Eastern Conference Finals. Sorry, man.
Yeah.
They're just not. But John says they got promise. So,
Yes.
all right. With that, I think we're moving into the top 3. Are we not?
Yes, we are.
I believe so. I would assume if I were to guess, I would say you've got Miami, then Milwaukee, then Brooklyn.
Yes and no.
Yes,
I have Miami at
no.
3.
All right, let's do it. Miami at 3.
So Miami, of course, you have the Kyle Lowry trade. That was a big addition, especially given the talent he has, experience, and he can really command the court. You put him alongside Duncan Robinson, who can shoot, Jimmy Butler, who can shoot, defend, pass, and then they bring in like a champion in PJ Tucker, who knows what it takes to win, and you got big old Bam Bam to defend the paint. It's a great starting 5. I think they've got good bench pieces like Markieff Morris, Tyler Hero, who had a fantastic game the other night. And so I think they've got a great team, but I think there's just something missing.
Maybe
it's just that feeling you get.
Health.
It's just that feeling like you get it and you're just like, there's something missing. Whether it be with that power forward position, like PJ Tucker was great, don't get me wrong, but sometimes I feel like there's just some things he just can't do, or some players he can't contend with.
Yeah.
I know he was great defending with Milwaukee, but at times I felt like he wasn't quite able to compete.
Yeah, I mean, that's what happens when you're undersized in a league that depends a lot on height. Mm-hmm. What is your opinion on Tyler Hero's upside? Because there's some games where he absolutely balls out, and then some games like he's not there. Is it a consistency thing? Do you think he can become more consistent, or you think this is kind of, again, he's only 21, as we've seen from Julius Randle, who spent like 5 years of people thinking that he was kind of a dud of a pick, turns 26, 25, 26, and now he's an all-star. What's your thoughts on him?
I think Tyler Hero is great. I think it ultimately rests on him whether or not he's able to develop that consistency. Like we see with Ben Simmons, if you don't put in the effort, you're not going to be able to improve. He's very talkative. Sometimes that's good, but sometimes it's also a problem. So I think if he's able to just take in a little bit of that personality, sometimes the personality is good. It's what you need. But I think for the time being, if he's able to hone it in and then focus on improving with the consistency, he'll really help the Heat and can make them that legitimate. I mean, I think they're legit, but an even better contender for the championship.
Can we win the title this year?
I won't say you can't, but
that's all I need. You're saying there's a chance.
There's always a chance. I mean, I didn't think the Hawks were going to make the Eastern Conference Finals. It happened.
I feel like, though, if we're going to do it, this is going to be the year. Because Jimmy Butler's 32 now. Lowry's 35.
Yes.
Some of the pieces are getting older. We've got this year, maybe next year if we get another piece. But I think that's
I think the window is quickly closing.
Yeah, that's for sure. Is there any potential of a package from Miami for Bradley Beal, like a Kyle Lowry, Oladipo, Markieff Morris, and some picks type deal for Beal?
It wouldn't be like that. It would be likely maybe I could easily see Duncan Robinson, Tyler Hero, maybe Markieff Morris, and a couple picks.
I feel like if I'm Miami, I don't do that.
That's the problem. I think Beal's just that good, and I don't think Washington's going to be offering anything little.
No, I don't think so. I think if we do that, that's going to be like we have to win it this year, and if we don't, then it's like I would just blow the whole thing up.
Well, I think if you're able to I think you've got 3 years tops. I think you got 3 years.
All right. Well, that's promising. No, I'll take that. Johnny Sports Blog says 3 years. So I'll take it. All right. Into the top two, the Eastern Conference Finals prediction, Milwaukee and Brooklyn.
Mm-hmm. So I have Milwaukee as the better team right now. But I think in the end, Brooklyn wins it all.
All right. Let's go with Milwaukee first then.
So Milwaukee's got a lot of the returning pieces. Like I said, they lost PJ Tucker. They lost Bryn Forbes, who was a great shooter. But they bring in good quality pieces for the bench, like Rodney Hood, Grayson Allen, George Hill. They extended Grayson Allen. So I think they've got pieces. But I think they don't have as much talent as Brooklyn has. It's simple as that. I love Giannis. I think Chris Middleton is phenomenal, is getting better with each day. I think Drew Holiday is arguably the best defensive point guard if you consider Ben Simmons. Aside from that, I don't know if they're able to get it back together again and win it back-to-back because it's nearly impossible.
Yeah, that's for sure. And I also want to say, I'm assuming your Brooklyn Cav is under the assumption that Kyrie will be playing with the team.
Yes, but even if he's not, I still think Brooklyn's got this thing where they're able to. Brooklyn lost terribly to Milwaukee in that first game, but they were kind of off regardless. But when you put like Kevin Durant, even on his off night, is still averaging 30 plus points a game. James Harden hasn't looked all that great, I feel like, so far, but I like what their bench is able to provide.
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
All right. And then on to Brooklyn. Well, we've mentioned a couple of the names. Is there anything more to it really than that, than those couple guys? Or give us some of maybe the more notable guys who aren't those three.
So I think what really propels them is these key veteran pieces. Patty Mills is the first one. Patty Mills, and you can even add him with LaMarcus Aldridge. They come from that San Antonio team. And so Patty Mills, he was phenomenal last night. But he's a great shooter, can play both point and shooting guard, and is a great spark off the bench. And then with LaMarcus, he was crucial in those final minutes of last night's game. He was the main reason why they were able to win. He was, I think, perfect from the free throw line. And as long as he can stay healthy, he's going to be a great center, probably a starting center for them long term. And if he needs to, he can be off the bench.
Are you worried about them breaking down, the older guys not staying healthy? Or do they have enough pieces to kind of limit the minutes and rotate in and out and keep them fresh?
I think a little bit of both. I think they can rotate in and out. But I think even if you lose, like, let's say they lose LaMarcus Aldridge, you have Paul Millsap. You've got Blake Griffin. Like, you've got other pieces that you can swing in there. I know they lost DeAndre Jordan and Jeff Green, but they've got plenty of pieces to replace them. And Brooklyn's one of those appealing places where people can come back if they want to. Like, they can easily get a free agent.
Yeah. What's wild about them is, like, if you put this team on paper 5 years ago, that's like an NBA 2K, I want to make my own super team.
Right.
Nutty. The names on that roster are insane. All right. All right. That wraps up the Eastern Conference. Got Brooklyn, Milwaukee, Eastern Conference Finals, with Brooklyn heading to the finals. And as John has already told us, he's got them winning it all. And we're going to move on to the West before saying our end of season awards picks like MVP, Coach of the Year, Most Improved, etc. But without further ado, wow, I've said without further ado more times in this episode than I think the entire previous 42 episodes combined. All right, let's go. Starting at the bottom, Western Conference. Here we go.
So, starting at the bottom, we got the two teams that fought with each other last night. We got, at the bottom, OKC, who caught the worst end of that game last night as they got humbled by Houston. So with OKC, I was kind of shocked that they took Josh Giddey. I thought there were a couple of their players that were better fits. I mean, I like what they're adding. I don't think Giddey's a bad player at all. They had Giddey, Man, and I think Man was a little bit of a reach as well. But it's going to need a long time. They do have a ton of picks to work with in the future. So nothing to be worried about. It's just going to take a while for them.
Is Sam Presti still there? Is he still the GM? Well, he drafted Westbrook, Durant, and Harden. So if anyone's going to do it, it's going to be him.
Yeah, and they've got Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who's turning into a great player.
All right, sounds good. Moving up the list to Houston.
Going up to Houston. Houston had my favorite draft. I thought they were the biggest winners. First off, they get Jalen Green from the USA team / G League night. Then they had Usman Garuba. They had Josh Christopher from Arizona State. These guys are young. They're not developed, but they're going to be great pieces in the years to come. And they've got good pieces already in there. They've got a good veteran in Eric Gordon. Christian Wood is playing fantastic. And Kevin Porter Jr. is starting to get there.
Is John Wall still around, isn't he?
Yes, he's still there, but they're still trying to find a destination for him.
I feel like with players like him who aren't quite good enough to be number one or number two pieces on it, or I think he's good enough to be a number two, but number one pieces on a championship team, but they still demand that max contract. It's really hard for them to get on good winning teams because they don't have that little bit extra the way a Durant or a LeBron or whoever does.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit unfortunate for him that he's in that situation where he's like a 1.5. He's like option 1.5. But that's kind of how it goes a little bit in the league. So
maybe Brooklyn.
maybe Brooklyn. Oh my gosh, dude! If they get John Wall, I think surely Adam Silver would say no, just like he did with Chris Paul to the Lakers all those years ago. You're gonna have to. Well, maybe not. I don't know. All right, moving up the list. Who we got?
Minnesota.
All right.
Minnesota, another rough year last year. But I think they're going to be a little bit better. Big man Karl Anthony Towns. They got Jaden McDaniels. Anthony Edwards. I think he really needs to improve. It's been 2 years now. If he doesn't improve, I think it could be the end of the ropes for him very soon. But I mean, they added Patrick Beverly. It was kind of a puzzling offseason, but I don't see how they could be much worse than 23 and 49.
Yeah, that's kind of bad. Jeez. They were so promising like 4 or 5 years ago.
Right.
And then just kind of tanked. That's really unfortunate. But you always like to see up-and-coming teams do well, kind of mix it up at the top.
Mm-hmm.
But, all right. So, we got OKC, Houston, Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
Who's next?
Next, it's another one of those rough year teams. Sacramento. I spoke about him a little bit earlier, but they added Davion Mitchell out of Baylor. He's a great point guard, but I'm not sure if point guard is really what they needed. that said, if they were, let's say, to trade for Ben Simmons or like a different guard, they've got plenty of guards to send back. But they've got Rashawn Holmes, who's been a decent center for them, a little bit undersized. De'Aaron Fox is their best player, but they really didn't do much. And I think they're going to get worse before they get better.
Well, it's kind of sad hearing all these teams that are just like sitting at the bottom.
Right.
All right. Moving on.
Moving on, we got the Spurs. Spurs had a rough year in, seems like 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
They were 33-39, didn't make the playoffs for the first time in forever.
Since what? Since like the 90s, right? Something like that?
I think so.
Amazing.
First time under Greg Popovich.
Yeah.
But they lost a lot of their older guys, which needed to be done, like Trey Lyles, Rudy Gay, DeMar DeRozan, and Patty Mills. But they bring in a few young guys. Like they drafted Joshua Primo out of Alabama, who is a great shooting guard, a little streaky at times. Same with Bryn Forbes.
Right.
But they bring in Doug McDermott, who's a great small forward. And Zach Collins, who's a good center, but he's had injury problems with Portland, but he's now on the Spurs.
Yeah, just goes to show that everything comes in cycles, the Spurs specifically. And then the players as well, you know, like the Spurs didn't have room for the old players anymore because the team was going in a different direction, but somebody like Brooklyn has a need for them. So there's a need for there's always a spot for somebody who's got that level of talent, right? Everybody in the NBA is actually just absolutely insane at basketball. So always room for those guys who've been at that all-star level, LaMarcus Aldridge, etc., Blake Griffin, those sorts of guys. All right. I think that's moving into top 10.
Yeah, New Orleans Pelicans. They lost two quality point guards in Lonzo Ball and Eric Bledsoe, as well as big man Steven Adams, who they traded. But they added a few key pieces, like Devontae Graham. They brought in Garrett Temple, Trey Murphy III from Duke, who they drafted, and Jonas Valanciunas, who they just extended by 2 years the other day. So they've got good pieces. I think arguably one of the most improved players and who will have a breakout year will be Nikhil Alexander-Walker, related to Shea Gilgeous-Alexander Walker. But he had, I think, like 20 plus points against the Sixers in their opening night loss, but he was their leading scorer. I know there's a little bit of issue with Zion right now. Apparently he's a little bit over the weight that they wanted him to be at. And he's also dealing with some injury stuff. So timetable on that could be a little bit.
And Brandon Ingram as well, still there.
Yep, he's still there, still doing great.
Good. Yeah, I'm looking down the roster. They got a couple of they got some good pieces as well.
Mm-hmm.
They're another one of these teams where it's kind of like they're right on the bubble of doing something, but not quite. If a couple bounces go their way, they could squeak in type deal.
Yeah, but I still see them on the cusp of looking from the outside in.
Yeah, unfortunately. I would agree with that. All right. Who's next?
Next up, we have Memphis. We got the leading scorer in the NBA right now, or at least points per game goes, simply because they've only played one game. So you got Ja Moran. This guy's taken Memphis and put him into contention. They've got good pieces around him. Like they've got Dylan Brooks, who's a good shooter, and he was injured last year. Kyle Anderson, who's not bad. Jaren Jackson Jr., who's great. And they, like I said, they traded away Valanciunas, but they added Steven Adams, who's a good center. But it's gonna take some time. I think they overexceeded what was expected of them last year and will be around the same play this year, maybe a little bit worse.
Well, that's kind of what happens when you got a player like John Morant who kind of just drags the team with him, doesn't it? He's some player, isn't he?
Yeah. I mean, he's phenomenal, but it gets you only so far, as we saw with their first round exit against Utah, losing 4-1 in the series.
It's one of those things where he papers over a lot of cracks, a lot of deficiencies that they have. He kind of gets them out of tough situations that maybe if they added another piece or two, they could be looking at something decent. So I don't know. We'll see. I'm excited for what he's got. I hope he doesn't turn into, he being Morant, doesn't turn into one of these kind of like the John Wall type 1.5, like not really a first option, but not better than a second option. Because
no, I think he'll be one of the top 5 point guards in about 1 to 2 years.
There you go. Heard it here first. Hot takes. All right, moving into the top 8, the entrenched playoff teams.
So I got the Clippers. Clippers, unfortunately, will be without Kawhi Leonard for this year. I don't know if it extends into the playoffs, but probably will be if they were to make it.
What's his injury?
Yeah, he suffered an injury last year at playoffs. That's why they were without him in those final games against Phoenix in the Western Conference Finals.
Torn ACL,
yeah, unfortunately. But they also lost a few key guards in Rajon Rondo, Patrick Beverley. And even though they added like Eric Bledsoe, who's a great point guard, it's a lot of talent that they lost simply by injury and free agency.
Yeah. Eric Bledsoe is not really in the same mold as the Beverly Rondo kind of scrapper types either.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see how they all fit together, but hopefully I think I just clicked on the Clippers. It said Kawhi was ahead of schedule in terms of recovery from the ACL, but ACLs are always they won't risk it, I wouldn't think.
No. Especially because they just extended him.
Yeah. But that'll be his last big extension, I think. He's kind of getting up there a little bit.
Right.
Which is nutty to say because he was like the next he had like a couple really good years and he's gonna be kind of hurt and then kind of just don't know what's going on. But no, he's after he left San Antonio, he really, or those last couple of years in San Antonio, he was a great player for sure. Yeah. Hopefully we'll return back to his
old
former self. Yeah, his old self, definitely. And then we can hear him laugh during press conferences again. Because that's really what everybody knows him for.
Yeah.
All right. Moving on.
Dallas.
Luka Doncic. I told everybody when he was drafted, people were like, oh, I don't know. Like Stephen A. Smith and all them were like, oh, I don't know. And I was like, no, he's going to be a baller. And here we are.
Yeah. Oh, he can ball. He's one of the greatest players in the NBA right now. But unfortunately, he's on the losing side of that notorious Hawks Mavericks deal. Trae Young for Luka Doncic on draft day a few years back. As Trae Young has simply gotten further in the playoffs. And I mean, you could argue who's better, but it's probably Luka.
I would say. He's just bigger. He's got a little bit more about him. He can do more things.
But like I was saying, being a star gets you only so far, and he's not been able to mesh with some of these other pieces like Kristaps Porzingis, Dorian Finney-Smith, and Tim Hardaway Jr. They haven't really gelled. They had this series against the Clippers in the first round for a little bit, and then they let it get out of hand.
Do you see a midseason move for them, taking like a Tim Hardaway or a Finney-Smith and kind of trying to get another piece?
I could see a move. I don't know if it would be them buying or selling. I think they're in a weird position of determining whether to buy or sell. Yeah, it's really tough to say.
All right. Well, hopefully they do well. Luka's my boy. Was soccer juggling during the warm-ups, and that's why I like him. All right, moving on. Who you got next?
Golden State, 2-0. Golden State. Even without Klay Thompson, they have the best player in the NBA right now, Steph Curry. I mean, he was laughing it up the other night. He was barking, I forgot with who, but he was challenged to shoot it from the logo. Like 30 seconds later, it's a 3-pointer from the logo.
Why would you do that to Steph Curry? That's just like asking for it, honestly.
I mean, I think he's the best shooter in NBA history. People can argue otherwise, but this guy, I mean, it was reported today that his trainer actually records. They have this thing that his shots don't count if they're not swishes. And there's a way to that they're able to measure where the ball goes in comparison to the rim, and that's how he measures his shots. Not by, oh yeah, I make it. It's by if it swishes. That's how good he is.
What a guy. I'm just happy if it goes in, honestly. If it hits the rim.
I mean, if only he could convert that to his holy moly game. But as far as the Warriors go, they were 39-33, which is a good record, but they weren't able to make the playoffs because of that play-in tournament. A little bit of controversy there, I think. But they've got I think Jordan Poole, he's filling in for Klay Thompson. He's going to evolve into a great starting guy for the time being. It'll be interesting what happens with the whole center position. They've got Kevon Looney right now, but Wiseman's there. Wiseman hasn't really performed up to his potential yet, or what they want him to be. But regardless, they've got good depth. They got Otto Porter Jr., Iguodala's back, Nemanja Bjelica, however you pronounce it. Apologies. And then they added Jonathan Kuminga in the draft.
Otto Porter Jr. is almost a like for Harrison Barnes all those years ago.
Yeah.
Very similar players. Is Thompson expected to be back this year, or is he out the whole year again?
No, he'll be back. He'll be back. They're estimating around Christmas.
Nice. When he comes back, they'll be
good.
Yeah.
They'll be good.
Yeah.
Hopefully he can play out the whole year.
I'm hoping he can. It's been 2 years since we've seen him play.
Yeah, because unfortunately back-to-back season endings.
Yeah, it was really unfortunate. I loved watching him. He's a great player.
Yeah.
All right, moving into the top sort of 4 or 5 type area. All right, we've got, let's see, who's left? We got Phoenix left, Denver's left, Utah, and the Lakers, obviously.
Yeah.
And is that it? Are we into the top 4?
I think so.
We're into the top 4. Let's go.
I've got at number 4, Denver. Denver's got a great starting 5 with Monte Morris, Will Barton, Michael Porter Jr. He got that huge deal. You got Aaron Gordon, who they got from Orlando last year, and
that's a good
pickup. Joker, the reigning MVP. Although some argue that it's Joel Embiid. Nonetheless, he's the MVP. And they added Jeff Green, who's a good small forward / power forward. They added him from Brooklyn through free agency, but they lost like Shaq Harrison at the point. They lost JaVale McGee. They lost Paul Millsap. And they were fantastic record-wise in the regular season, but then once it came playoff time, you saw the Joker lose his cool. Got ejected, and they got swept 4-0 in that series, the Phoenix.
Yeah. If they rematched, would you expect – I would expect it to be much closer.
Yeah. I'd see a much closer series, but I'd still see the Suns winning.
All right. You got the Suns next?
I think I have – no, I have Utah.
All right, Utah.
So Utah is one of my favorite teams on the Western side to watch. I like Gobert. He's a great defensive center. He reminds me of like the traditional old centers of the NBA, in that they're very stick inside the paint, defend it, not big on shooting all the
20
time.
and a half rebounds a game so far. Nuts.
Yeah. But they've got Conley back. They've got Donovan Mitchell. I think Mitchell's going to have a fantastic year. Bogdanovich, Royce O'Neal. O'Neal's underrated, but he can shoot. And then they added Rudy Gay, who's old, yes, but he's a good backup and bench player. And then Hassan Whiteside for that center position.
It was a couple of years ago, Hassan Whiteside was the next big thing for the center position, and then that Miami shipped him off, and then he went downhill from there.
Yeah,
he still's got something to give though. He'll be useful for them.
Oh, he'll reemerge. I think he'll reemerge. He'll be a good bench presence.
All right. Moving on to our Western Conference finalists, Phoenix and the Lakers.
So even though I had the Phoenix Suns and the Lakers as the top two teams, I actually have Utah as winning the Western Conference. Like I was saying, I think they just have that depth, and they have a little bit of everything. But nonetheless, the best two teams right now, I would say Phoenix is the best. But at the beginning of the season, I had Los Angeles, so I'll go with Phoenix first.
Okay.
So Phoenix, you got Chris Paul. Had Chris Paul been healthy in those in the NBA Finals, they could have possibly have won, but Milwaukee was simply better. But they added a lot of good bench pieces. They lost Torrey Craig, who was a good small forward, but they added guys like JaVale McGee, Elfrid Payton, Chison Randle, and then they traded their first round pick to Brooklyn and got Landry Shamet, who's who's a very good young 3-point shooter.
Yeah, that's a good pickup.
Yeah. And then everyone from that starting five is back. So
there you go.
I think they'll be better as far as the regular season record goes. Like, I think they'll be better than 51-21, which is hard to say. But they won't go as far as they will in the playoffs, because I think Chris Paul's age is really and even Jay Crowder, you could argue, will limit them.
We'll see. I really, really hope they win it this year so Chris Paul gets his ring. But
I really hope so too.
All right.
Unless it's the Sixers.
Well, we all know the Sixers.
That seems unlikely.
Finals, won't they?
And then lastly, we got the Lakers. Lakers, they bring in Russ. They trade away King's Ransom and Caldwell Pope. Not even trade. Well, right? They just get rid of it. They lose Schroeder, Caldwell Pope, Caruso, Nunn. They added Nunn. They get rid of Kuzma, Harrell, Markieff Morris, Andre Drummond, Marc Gasol. List goes on. But they added big pieces. They added Carmelo. They added DeAndre Jordan, Dwight Howard, Trevor Ariza, who's out due to injury. Kendrick Nunn, also out due to injury. But they bring in Rondo, Westbrook. They have a lot of versatility to them. It's just a matter of getting it all to work together. That's going to be the key thing to their success.
Yeah. But you think you think they'll fall short? You have a Utah and Brooklyn finals with Brooklyn winning it all?
Mm-hmm. I think it'll be interesting. I think Utah somehow, I think it's a lot like Phoenix. You don't think they're going to do anything, and then it's like, whoa, where'd they come from?
Yeah.
And so I think it's one of those like low market teams. Like, you think NBA, you think of these big cities like LA, Brooklyn, New York, And then you hear Utah and you're like, what? But I think the Lakers, I think they make the finals, the Western Conference Finals, but they lose to Utah. Yeah.
All right. You heard it here first. A Brooklyn Nets NBA champion from Johnny Sports Blog. Heard it here first. All right. Real quick, we'll do rapid fire for the end of season awards, and then we'll call it a day. All right. We got, let's see, there's 6, right? MVP, most improved, 6-man, defensive, coach, and rookie, right?
Yeah.
All right.
You can always go executive, but yeah.
No, nobody cares about executives, John. Let's be honest.
Executive always goes to the NBA champ. Usually.
It does, really. All right, let's go. MVP, who you got?
MVP, it's easy for me. It's Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant is he's the leader and really the heart and soul of the Brooklyn Nets right now. If you need that last minute go-to shot or last second go-to shot, you go to Kevin Durant. This guy's won multiple MVPs. This guy's been to the All-Star game basically almost every year. And Team USA, he was phenomenal. This guy is a leader. He can shoot. He can defend. Like he was making multiple blocks last night in the most important moments. He's the guy to rely on, and he's the one who comes through in the moment of need.
Yeah, sounds like it. All right, most improved.
Most improved. I've got Lonzo Ball, Chicago Bulls. I think Lonzo takes a big step. I think now that he's got a lot of decent shooters around him, like Zach Levine, and like Nikola Vucevic, and other shooters. You could even include Caruso. But he's got a lot of people to pass to. He doesn't have that burden of feeling like he's the main guy. Yeah.
All right. 6th man.
I like Jordan Clarkson. Clarkson of the Jazz. He usually gets on the cusp of almost averaging a triple-double each game, or what it feels like. And he just comes off the bench for Utah and provides a spark that just really energizes the team and really helps them win. Yeah. So I think he's crucial to their
especially
success.
If they end up in the NBA Finals. He'll definitely be a contender for it. We got defensive player of the year. Who you got?
I've got yet again Rudy Gobert. This guy can rebound, he can block, and he's got no Ben Simmons to compete with as of this moment. So it's a runaway.
All right. Rookie.
Rookie of the year, I got Jalen Green of the Houston Rockets. I think despite not playing any college ball, he's a starter on the Rockets, and he's going to be a big piece to their success going forward. Not this year necessarily, but he's got a lot of potential, and I think he's going to be an all-star in about 2 years.
All right, Jalen Green. And then last but not least, coach of the year.
Coach of the year, I think it's Nate McMillan of the Hawks. This guy, we really saw it last year. In big moments, he got the Hawks to come together. These were young guys who had absolutely no playoff experience, like John Collins, Trae Young, and he was able to get the most out of them. And that really speaks volumes to how you can coach a team. And I think it's only the beginning for the Hawks. It'll be interesting to see what they can do. But I think he'll be the coach of the year.
All right. Sounds good. Love it. With that, we'll wrap up this special edition of the World XP Podcast, NBA preview for the 2021-22 season. It's nuts that we're almost in November of 2021 already. But here we are. John, love it. Check out Johnny's Sports Blog. Link will be in the description. If you enjoyed, like, comment, and subscribe. Get your merch. DM us. Any last words, John?
No. Subscribe to World XP Podcasts, World XP Soccer. And
love it.
Sports.
Sports. We'll end with that. See you guys later.
All right. Thank you.